does hypnosis even work? Because of how hypnosis has been portrayed in film and television over the years, it's developed a spotty reputation, mainly because people don't understand how it works. So in this video, we're going to answer 3 questions. What is hypnosis? How does hypnosis work? And does hypnosis even work? We'll also bust some major myths about what hypnosis can and can't do, including whether someone can control you against your will, whether you can get stuck in trance, and the truth about using hypnosis to retrieve memories. So let's jump in. What is hypnosis? Let's start by demystifying what a hypnotic state actually is. And here's the surprising part. It's completely natural. Hypnotic trance isn't some mysterious altered state that requires special powers or secret knowledge. It's actually something you experience every single day. That absorbed feeling when you're watching a good movie and get so immersed that you lose track of time, that's a trance state. The drive home on autopilot when you arrive and barely remember the journey, that's a trance state. That liminal state you experience as you close your eyes and drift towards sleep at night, that's a trance state. And the meditative state where time seems to disappear altogether, that's a trance state too. In fact, there are fascinating similarities between certain forms of meditation and hypnotic trance, particularly in how they affect certain parts of the brain. But I'll explore that more in future videos. For now, essentially, hypnotherapy simply guides you into this naturally occurring trance state intentionally and uses it therapeutically. There's nothing mystical about it. We're just working with a state of consciousness your brain already knows how to access. How does hypnosis work? Now that you understand what hypnosis is, let's talk about the mechanics. Modern hypnosis relies on 3 main principles. First, hypnosis relies on an overload of message units. This means a lot of words. The hypnotherapist uses a steady flow of language to guide a person into a trance state. And this works because most people can maintain focused attention for only brief periods, and eventually they'll create some sort of escape for themselves. So when someone speaks to you in a sustained monologue with the right type of language and with your consent, in fact, only with your consent, you eventually lose conscious focus, tune out of active thought, and start slipping into a subconscious state. Second, hypnosis relies on the rapport between the hypnotherapist and the client. The client must receive the hypnotherapist as either an authority figure or a trustworthy confidant who's an expert in hypnosis. Now, authority used to mean old school dominance tactics, interrupting clients with yes, but, or employing condescending know-it-all behavior. But we humans are way more complex than that, and many of us aren't receptive to dominance approaches, although some people actually still are. Today, authority has also come to mean that the hypnotherapist has proper training, transparently explains the game plan while giving you space to also inform the process, and genuinely listens and understands you. This rapport is crucial. You're relying on them to help you tackle something that feels difficult to do on your own. Third, and most importantly, hypnosis relies on the consent of the client. In order for the hypnotic trance to work, you have to agree to it. And although it's not the same, but it's related to this idea of consent, only go to a hypnotherapist if you are ready to change a habit and would like to use hypnosis to do so. In other words, if your significant other is pressuring you to go to a hypnotherapist to quit smoking, you might actually be resistant because either you're not ready to quit, or you're quitting in a manner you're not quite sure about, or perhaps a little bit of both. What's actually happening in your brain during hypnosis? Using various techniques, the hypnotherapist guides you into a relaxed brainwave state, specifically between alpha, which is 8 to 12 hertz, and theta, which is 4 to 8 hertz. Research indicates that this brainwave range is optimal for learning and absorbing information. Why? Because you release the conscious critical mind that's active during your waking state, which is beta, 12 to 30 hertz, and start accessing that subconscious mind where most of your automatic thoughts and behaviors run on autopilot. From a neuroscience perspective, what's happening during a trance state is fascinating. Brain imaging studies show altered patterns of connectivity across multiple brain networks during hypnosis. Research has found increased connectivity in attention networks and sensory processing areas during hypnotic states, while the default mode network, which is typically active when we think about ourselves, about others, and when we daydream, may actually show decreased connectivity, particularly between areas like the posterior cingulate cortex and medial prefrontal cortex. This hypnotic modulation appears to selectively engage prefrontal regions responsible for focused attention and inhibitory control. And these shifts in brain connectivity are part of why hypnotic suggestion can be effective. Your brain is literally reorganizing how different regions communicate with each other, making you more receptive to focused suggestion while quieting the mind-wandering networks that might normally generate distracting thoughts. how suggestion and visualization work. And here's where the real work happens. In this receptive state, your imagination becomes a powerful tool. The hypnotherapist guides you through visualizations and scenarios that help your subconscious mind rehearse new patterns and release old ones. The reason this is so powerful is because our brains like what is known and predictable, and we dislike the unknown. The practice of rehearsal helps your brain accept new patterns of behavior because by actively visualizing them, they become knowns. The hypnotherapist offers suggestions, which are carefully worded statements that align with your goals. And because you're in a receptive subconscious state, these suggestions bypass the critical conscious mind that might normally resist change. The key is that these suggestions must align with what you want. They work with your intentions, not against them. This is why hypnotherapy is often used as a reconditioning technique to help you override habits that are consciously difficult to break. Once your subconscious mind gets involved and is hypnotically primed, habits become easier to control because the subconscious understands that the behavior isn't healthy or beneficial, and it starts to reject the habit rather than continue to repeat it. Because habits operate automatically without conscious deliberation, they're encoded as procedural patterns in the brain. And this is precisely why hypnotherapy's ability to access subconscious processing can be so effective. You're working directly with the same automatic systems where the habits are stored. It's important to understand that this is a collaborative process. You're not unconscious or passive. You're actively engaged, just in a different state of awareness. Your mind is working with the hypnotherapist, not being worked on by them. Does hypnosis work? The short answer is yes, but success depends on several variables. First, the rapport between the hypnotherapist and the client. So how you think and feel about your hypnotherapist matters enormously. So pick someone that feels right for you. I've been trained to work with virtually everyone. However, from my own personal experience as a person that's resistant to hypnosis, working with someone that you feel good about matters more than is usually discussed. Number 2. Your suggestibility, how receptive you are to taking in new information from an external source. There are ways to test for this, and I typically ask potential clients to fill out a questionnaire before a session together to understand how they'll best take in information so that I can adjust the words that I use. And remember, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. As someone who is less suggestible myself to hypnosis, I found that mindfulness was transformative for my own habit change. And this personal experience, combined with my training as a Brown University qualified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, allows me to offer clients genuine options based on what might actually work for their brain, not just push one modality for everyone. Sometimes a mix of approaches does the trick too. Number 3, your ability to be absorbed in the experience. So how absorbed your mind gets during the imagined scenarios that the hypnotherapist guides you through. I also have a second questionnaire that helps me to better understand how engaged you will likely be during a hypnotic process. 4, the hypnotherapist's skill in adjusting their language to suit clients with various levels of suggestibility. Some of us take in information literally, and others read between the lines and need to be approached differently. And still others, like me, are less suggestible to others and more receptive to themselves. The hypnotherapist needs to know how to adjust to each person accordingly. 5, mental states, both yours and the practitioner's on the day of the session. Yes, these can affect things tremendously because we're all human, but the right hypnotherapist will be skilled in ways to bring both themselves and the client to a healthy, neutral baseline to connect and work together towards the goal of the session. 6, your stress level. The amount of stress in your mind and body affects receptivity. There are ways to easily work with this and discharge that energy before the session gets underway. However, it's been my experience that if clients have recently experienced a major, challenging life event, it's usually best for them to wait a bit before having a hypnosis session. And this is because right after a major life event, the critical mind is much more engaged than usual and likely absorbed in trying to make sense of what's happened. So it will likely be a bit less receptive to hypnosis because a sense of stability and perhaps even safety has been compromised, and the brain is actively trying to account for that. Examples of major events include experiencing a traumatic event, such as having an accident, being the victim of an assault, or witnessing something, losing a loved one, experiencing a relationship breakup, experiencing a significant life change, such as losing a job or being diagnosed with an illness. I'll be discussing this and contraindications to hypnosis, including meditation, in a separate video, so keep your eye out for that. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it highlights why hypnosis can work beautifully for some people and perhaps less effectively for others. In fact, I offer technology-assisted hypnotherapy because I found that technology can help to balance out some of the variables to achieve the optimal brainwave range that we're going for. And that's a topic of another video, so stay tuned for that. Now let's tackle the biggest misconceptions about hypnosis head on. There's this faulty belief that hypnotherapists have been given the keys to the human psyche that no one else is allowed to have. But that's actually far from the truth. Let me walk you through what hypnosis absolutely cannot do. Myth number 1, someone can control you against your will. The answer is no. Hypnosis is only possible if you consent to being hypnotized. All of the variables I already mentioned, rapport, trust, consent, must be present for hypnosis to work at all. You're not unconscious or under someone else's control. You're in a relaxed, receptive state, but you are still you. If a hypnotherapist suggested something that violated your values or made you uncomfortable, your mind would simply reject it. In fact, you would probably even come out of the hypnotic state entirely. Your self-protective mechanisms don't go offline just because you're relaxed. You've probably also seen stage hypnosis where people cluck like chickens or do embarrassing things. And this works because those volunteers have consented to be entertaining. They want to participate in the show. And here's the key. Those volunteers only do embarrassing things under hypnosis if they'd also be willing to do them in an alert, conscious state. They just seem more uninhibited in a relaxed state. Therapeutic hypnosis is completely different. It's a healing modality focused on your personal goals, not on entertainment. Myth number 2, you can get stuck in hypnosis forever. The answer is no. You cannot stay hypnotized forever if the hypnotist forgets to count you out. Your brain is wired for survival, and it will do everything it can to protect you, including waking you up if a hypnotic state drags on for too long. Remember, you experience a trance state, or in other words, alpha and theta brainwave dominance, every day at various times of day and depending on what you're doing. You're naturally coming out of the hypnotic trance on your own. Myth number 3, hypnosis can retrieve lost memories. This is perhaps the most dangerous misconception, so let me be clear. Hypnosis cannot and should not be used to retrieve old memories. I know there's a popular belief that hypnosis can help people remember forgotten events or childhood experiences, but the brain is a faulty recording device. Human memory is notoriously flawed, unless of course you're one of the rare individuals that has hyperthymesia, but that's a separate discussion. Every time we recall a memory, we actually reconstruct it. And under hypnosis, the imagination is highly active. This means people can create false memories that feel completely real, but never actually happened. This is so well documented that most states in the US have laws that will throw out witness testimony in court if it's found that the witness tried to use hypnosis to retrieve their memories of an event. The risk of false memories is simply too high. So while hypnotherapy can help you break habits, manage anxiety, improve sleep, enhance performance, and work with present moment patterns, it should never be used to try to recover memories. However, past life regressions are safe, but I'll talk more about that in a separate video, so stay tuned for that as well. So there you have it, hypnosis demystified. It's a natural state you already experience daily. It works through specific techniques to access your subconscious mind in a receptive brainwave state. It does work, although there are variables that need to be considered. And no, you cannot be controlled against your will, and you can't get stuck in a trance, and hypnosis can't retrieve lost memories, but it can help you create positive change in your present and your future. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, and remember, your consciousness is yours to shape. So use it wisely. See you in the next video.